Daniel, and he's on a tear. And he was very, very critical of his performance. Very, very respectful in his victory, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Stefan going forward. You know, he's on a 2-fight winning streak now, and I think he can beat anybody potentially in the division.
Absolutely. And Tom, same question to you, sir. How did you rate Stefan Struve, a guy who, let's remind ourselves, he has a win over the current UFC heavyweight champion?
Yeah, I think Daniel Omielanchuk was kind of out his league in that fight. Daniel was on a 3-fight win streak, and he, of course, was on the Glasgow card as well, and he got the first round TKO there. So it was good to see him back in there and get a higher level opponent. But I think Stefan was just a step too far for him. Stefan's been in there with everybody. You know, he fought a who's who. Antonio Silva, he beat Bigfoot Silva earlier in the year. I thought he looked great. He's over his health scare. Before all of that, he was a title contender, in my opinion. You know, he was sort of hovering around that title shot. I think he'll get another couple of fights and I mean, the guy's 6'11", for God's sake. You know, that's exactly what you want in a heavyweight fight. You want a huge man that's just going to go in there and destroy folk, and he's got all the tools to do that. So I was impressed with his performance. I think it was always going to be his fight anyway. I expected him to win it in the first, to be honest, and fairly quickly, but he got the job done, and he looked good.
Absolutely, and you're right, they don't call him the skyscraper for nothing. And finally, Steve, your thoughts on Struve and just how looked he good, particularly that submission that he got?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the other guys. He looked very good in this performance, but yeah, Daniel just looked a bit outmatched, really. Like when you were sat there ringside, you could see the size difference was just crazy. Struve, like you just said, definitely lives up to his nickname. He looked very calm and measured on his feet, used his range well, but then when he put his opponent on his back, he just looked a lot better than his opponent on the ground. And the Darcy sunk in was a tight choke and
beautiful,
very well set up.
Yeah, excellent performance all round. I think we can all agree on that. Let's move on to Jimmy Manuwa then, who of course ended his bout in that spectacular fashion of OSP. I believe Owen St. Preux was the favourite going into this fight. I might need to double check that back. But let's start with Steve this time. Steve, like we discussed at the top of the show there, you were there live. Manuwa obviously got the hometown support, but just how impressed were you by his performance against Owen St. Preux?
Yeah, I mean, he looked insanely good again. His stand-up was just on another level. OSP looked like he'd gassed out pretty quickly, but Manuwa was landing a lot of really good body shots. And then the second round, as soon as he landed the shot that wobbled OSP, the crowd were up, the crowd were cheering. And then once that hook landed, that was just... I think everyone in the crowd just lost their mind when that punch landed. Manchester went wild for that punch. That was a crazy punch that definitely deserved the knockout of the night award he got. That was a beautiful punch.
Yeah, he did get a performance bonus. I forgot about that. That's right, actually. Tom, how did you rate this fight, and where would you like to see Jimmy Manuwa go next?
Oh, I loved that fight. I'll be honest, I going into the fight, I did the picks for the Daily Record, and I chose OSP to win that fight. I just thought John Jones couldn't finish him over the 5 rounds. I thought Jimmy's been out for a bit. This might just be too much of an ask in his first fight back. But no, OSP didn't fancy the striking match. That was obvious fairly quickly. Shot in for the wrestling sort of takedowns in the first round. Had a bit of success, but Jimmy got back up. But when Jimmy unleashed those strikes, that was the end. It was absolutely beautiful to watch. The body shots totally winded him. And OSP didn't want any of it. And the finish at the end was just beautiful. Absolutely deserved performance of the night. 100%. Top level strike for Jimmy.
Yeah, definitely agree. And Bob, same question to you, sir. Your thoughts on this fight, the finish, what next? What next for both fighters, sir?
You know, when I think of Jimmy Manuwa, you think of this kind of novelty striker, very explosive, and really, you don't, at least from my perspective, you don't really think of somebody who potentially is a world beater. But then you look at his record. I mean, he's only lost to Gustafsson Anthony Rumble Johnson. And you look at last night's performance, you guys mentioned those body shots were among the best body shots that I've seen in a long time. Perfectly executed. He just put on a clinic, looked world class. I mean, absolutely spectacular striker. And I was glad, when he initially knocked St. Preux down, or the second time he knocked him down. He did this lunging punch, this diving punch, and I'm glad he missed, because if he'd connected with that punch at the end, God knows what would have happened to St. Preux. Jimmy Manuwa, this is a spectacular fighter, and I think that he really has a chance to beat anybody in that division, given his style and given his willingness to improve. Ovince St. Preux, I'm not sure what's going to happen with him. I think he'll probably be remain a journeyman, remain a gatekeeper, very, very tough light heavyweight, good athletic skills and decent toughness in there. I'm not sure, where he goes from here, but I think Jimmy Manuwa really is living up to his nickname as the poster boy, and he'll continue to do so.
Poster boy, indeed. Well said, sir. Let's move on to the co-main event then, guys. Vitor Belfort, I mean, it's been rumoured after this fight, we might get into this later on, that but I should say prior to this fight, it was rumoured that he may very well retire. And, you can make the arguments for TRT and all the rest of it, we'll probably get into that, but he just looks a shell of the guy that was on that sensational run, those 3 knockouts in a row. Since I think Weidman's took his soul, I don't know, it doesn't look like he's interested anymore. Jacare fight was typifying of this. And this one, he started, explosive, and then really it was just the Moose's game from then on in. Bob, I'll come to you first this time, sir. Maybe I'm just being a bit too negative, but what was your thoughts on the fight, and in particular Vitor? What did you see happen with him?
No, John Boy, I agree with you. I think it was a real sad sight to see Vitor like this, to always wind up in this position. Weidman finished him brutally early in the first round. Yeah. Jacare, it just seems that Vitor is just winding up in the same position. It doesn't seem like he's able to. He hasn't really improved a lot on his groundwork, and he's a shell of his former self, and it's really unfortunate, because he was a great fighter. He still has heavy hands, but I don't think that he's going to be able to compete at the top echelon of his division. And after the fight, there was a few sources that said that Vitor was going to be retiring. Nothing has been confirmed as far as I can tell, but I would certainly hope for his sake that he would consider retirement and preserve his faculties going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I do still want to see him fight. I hope people don't misunderstand me there, but just not the guy that I'm seeing just now. Let's move on to Tom. Tom, what did you make of the co-main event? And on a more positive note, what about the Moose? Where does he go forward in his middleweight career?
Yeah, first of all, I agree with the panel that, to be honest, I think he should retire. We don't want to see. We've had 3 of the last 4 fights finished TKO losses. You can't do that. You can't keep performing like that. If Vitor doesn't win a fight in the first sort of minute after these crazy flurries that he does, then that's pretty much that. And the TRT thing's out of the question nowadays. And what we don't want is a repeat. One of my favourite fighters of all time is Chuck Liddell. And towards the end, he was fighting longer than he should have, and he started losing fights. So you want to try and maintain, in my opinion, a fighter should try and maintain at least some of your legacy. Well, this guy's going to be a Hall of Famer, Vitor, in my opinion, and you don't want to go out like that. He lost that fight. He was 100% outclassed by Gegard Mousasi. I expected Mousasi to win. I thought it would have been in the first round, but he absolutely outclassed him. There's no other way to put it. And it was a really, really impressive performance. And I think what happens now is, in terms of going forward for Gegard, we've got Joel Romero and Chris Weidman fighting at 205. Whoever wins that will get the next title shot. But following that, Mousasi sitting ready. He's got to be next for the title shot after that.
Wow. You don't think Jacare Rockhold Obviously, this is pending on how UFC 25 goes down, but you don't think they might be in the discussion once those two guys go down, potential winner of that gets the next title shot?
They might be. And they might actually arguably be more glamorous fighters for the belt. But I think Musashi is just technically an absolutely top level fighter. I know he doesn't say much. He keeps himself quite humble and quiet, and sometimes that doesn't appeal to UFC. You know, they like the Conor McGregors of the world that put on a show and build and hype fights. But that's not Musashi's game. He just gets in that ring and does the business. And I think, in my opinion, I think he should be right in line for that title shot very soon.
Well said, sir. And finally to excuse me. And finally to Steve, what did you make of this fight, sir? And what would you see happen to both fighters going forward?
Yeah, I mean, Belfort just looked to shadow. So you see in the weigh-ins, I think someone put up somewhere a picture of comparison before TRT and after TRT, and he just looks a completely different guy. He didn't really seem to do much in the fight. He spent a lot of the fight just backing up, waiting for Musashi to do something. I mean, the best part for him in the fight, weirdly, was when he got kicked in the head, hurt, backed up, and then he managed to stand on his feet whilst getting pounded. That's the most he really seemed to try and engage Musashi with. And then, again, like the others were saying, when he got taken down, this is the third fight now, he's been taken down and just pounded out in brutal fashion. And for a guy who's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it just seems to fold massively in that situation. I mean, I said to my friends when we're in the crowd, I said to them, because they were only casual fans, I was like, if this goes past the first 3 minutes, then Belfort stands a chance of not winning this. Unless he lands some crazy flurry within the first 3 minutes, he tends to fade badly. So, I mean, I'd be on the opinion of he possibly is at the stage now where his gloves should get hung up. There's not really much chance now of title pictures in his near future. There's no fights that he really needs to take. If he's taking fights now, he's just taking them for the sake of it. And that's like when the other guy said about Chuck Liddell, you just end up getting hurt for no reason at the latter point of your careers.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, in terms of Musashi, I mean, I'd go with Jacare in the title shot next if he gets past Rockhold. That guy's been on form recently and looks like a killer of most people. I think it'd be a bad matchup for Bisping. But I'd say Musashi maybe get a fight to line him up for a title shot in the future. So set him up. He'd probably like say number 2, but I'd say Jacare should be next in line for the title shot against Bisping.
I don't think I could argue with Jacare, but then I try not to show bias, and Jacare's my guy. Guys, let's move on to the main event. I'm hearing all sorts of controversy about the judges' scorecards on this one. Having rewatched it this afternoon, I think probably the right decision was made, but not by much. I think it was very close. Let's just say that. We saw Bisping dropped in the first and second rounds, and that obviously opens up the debate for this 10-8 and what is a 10-8 and what isn't in MMA. But let's turn over the panel here, starting with the man who was there live. Steve, what was the consensus on the crowd live, and do you think that was the right decision that was made?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the right decision. I scored it 48-47 Bisping. I mean, the crowd went absolutely mental when Bisping came out. Again, I've never heard so many boos as when Henderson came out. It was literally like a herd of cows walked into the arena. But when that punch landed, everyone knew it was coming at some point. But when it landed, everyone was on their feet. Everyone was cheering for Bisping. And when he got back up, the crowd just went insane. In terms of 10-8 rounds, I don't think that first should have been a 10-8. For it to be a 10-8, it should be a dominant round. Mm-hmm. Hendo didn't dominate that round. He dominated that minute of the fight. That in my mind, doesn't warrant a 10-8 round. Similar story in the second round when he did the same. He'd got hurt and Bisping came forward and he fought him. Bisping was back to his feet within a couple of seconds. That's not a 10-8. That's still a 10-9. And then after that, Bisping stuck to his game plan, leading with his left high kick, moving around a lot, keeping Hendo at bay. I scored the last 3 rounds for Bisping. So I scored it 3-2 Bisping. He outstruck him in every aspect apart from those 2 massive punches. And although he did look a mess after the fight, you can't win a fight by making your opponent look ugly. It's not a pretty sport at the end of the day. Yeah, Bisping outlanded him. Bisping outworked him. Bisping took it in my mind.
Fair play, sir.
No,
Tom,
no controversy.
No controversy, fair enough. Tom, how about you, sir? What were your thoughts on the fight and also